Hi guys, Richard from SharpshootingUK. As promised, the beginning of my new series of questions from the SharpshootingUK Facebook group. Interesting one came up this week, something I come across a lot on my ballistics training days at SharpshootingUK. People say to me on the hill, well, you know, I'm not very confident at long range, you know, you'll be a much better shot than me. Or your rifle will be much more accurate than mine. And I go, well, all right, what is the difference between me and my rifle, say, being a quarter-minute combo? That's a sort of one whole group type of thing at 100 yards. What's the difference between that and you being a 3/4 of a minute shot? I could shoot a little fingernail and you can only shoot a thumbnail. What difference does that make, say, at 1200 yards when we have a 4-minute of angle solution? It makes no difference. The deliverable accuracy is not greater or smaller than 3/4 of a minute. So logically, my being more accurate in pure terms, be it the accuracy of the rifle or the accuracy of the shooter, is lost in the noise made up of large and small components in the eventual shot solution downrange. Now, logic dictates that you can only deliver a quarter-minute instead of a 3/4 shot if you have all other noise removed. And that is tricky. So, here's the title of the video. Should I chase a single hole rifle or should I get out there and practice the wind? Now, some very, very experienced people are proponents of the latter. Get yourself a half-minute gun that's nice and stable, get out there and use it. Why would people as well informed as Brian Litz say such things? Well, let's break this down. Okay, let's look at what you're doing. If you are bench rest, say 200-yard bench rest, the standards of accuracy are incredibly high, and you will certainly need to go after a perfect single hole gun. The deliverable accuracy is there, the external variables that affect that are not a big problem, and serious peak levels of accuracy are needed, so you have to have them in your rifle and in your shooting. Now, at longer range, if you've got a 1 mile an hour minimum variability or error in your wind call, and that when you run it through your ballistics makes 3/4 of a minute of error, then given that you can't call less than 1 mile an hour of wind, for example, you have that much inevitable noise in the final achievable accuracy. Therefore, say that's, what did I say, 3/4 of a minute there? That's plus minus, of course. We're starting to get to the perfect deliverable quarter-minute not being on the table. Now, if you have a rifle with 800 rounds of barrel life, say one of the Magnums shoving something, you know, that is blaze of glory, you could do with spending 50 rounds on load development rather than 500. When people first get into reloading, they sweat all the details, every little one. And of course, I respect that. As you get more experienced, you start to look at how much time you're spending facing a wall in your garage, in your cellar, in your office, and you realize that it might be prudent to start being a bit more efficient, pruning out the things that don't add and focusing on the things that are crucial. And the more you reload, for the more cartridges, the more hours you spend in the week doing it, the more thousands of rounds you make a year, the more you start wanting to be efficient. And this is where this question of, do you need a perfect rifle for long range? Of course we all want all of our rifles going in the same hole with 0 SD and everything perfect. But what is the order of priority at long range? Well, the first factor that hides the theoretical accuracy, deliverable accuracy as I call it, potential of the gun, is feet per second variation, extreme spread, or SD. They're all names for the same thing, and that is one bullet comes out at 3,000 feet per second, the next bullet comes out at 3,000 feet per second, next bullet comes out at 3,000 feet per second. They'll all go in the same place. They'll have no vertical dispersion. So I've had people come to me many times and they go, oh, my rifle's really, really accurate. I've done a lot of work on it. When we shoot it at long range, they are up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down. And they think, well, you know, why is my rifle not delivering this accuracy potential that I see in it at 100 yards? And the answer is because they haven't chronographed, they haven't loaded carefully for nodes of low dispersion for feet per second, and their speeds vary up and down. So instead of 3,000, they get 2960, 3,000, 3,040, 3,010, 2962. You get my point. You've got some of these bullets going slower than the one before, the one after, and even though they go in the same hole at 100 yards, you have vertical dispersion. This is why all you hear the target guys talking about, the guys really searching for the top precision, all you hear them talk about is vertical, is the waterline. It's because that hides the achievable accuracy of you and your gun. You've got a quarter-minute gun with 60 feet per second of extreme spread, goodbye, you're going to shoot 2 minutes. Depends on your ballistics, you know, might be 3, might be whatever, but you've got to have them coming out at the same speed. So point 1, should I be chasing a perfect single hole gun? Point 1 in the no, that's the wrong tree to bark up category is no good being perfectly accurate if the SD, the standard deviation, extreme spread, feet per second variation, call it what you will, is not spot on, because that will hide the deliverable accuracy of the rifle. Same for the wind. Work out your analysis of the wind. This is something I teach. We shoot rabbits 600 yards in 25-mile-an-hour winds. If the next rabbit or the next target we're shooting is as much as quarter of an hour away on the clock, we need to change our solution, because you get the wind speed wrong, particularly you get the wind angle wrong, and you are no way able to deliver a hit on a minute or a minute and a half target, let alone a small target. So whether your gun is a quarter-minute perfect tack driver or a 1 minute quite baggy gun is completely disguised. So certainly a person who has good analytics for the wind, squared away ballistic solutions, no noise in their solving, in their ballistic solution, people who are no vertical in their loads, people who have that, but the gun actually only does 1 minute, or they can only do 1 minute of angle of accuracy, they will knock spots off someone who has any of those things wrong. Poor ballistics, poor vertical spread, but a single hole gun. So those are some of the things at play here. Likewise, if you are not shooting quarter-minute targets, you're in a discipline where the gong size is perhaps a minute and a half, then there is little point going too far in your load development. Now, I would say a happy medium would be to get the gun into a half minute. Nobody wants to go out with a gun that only shoots an inch. It really, ideally, we want everything sorted. We want a single hole gun with perfect node stability, perfect temperature stability, you know, wide nodes, no SD, Of course we do. We want our ballistics perfect. We want perfect drag curves. Of course, sweating the details is absolutely crucial, be they large or small. This is what I teach day in, day out. Don't get me wrong. But what I'm saying is, in the real world, if something's got to give, then accuracy, peak accuracy potential, is actually something you can let go a little bit. If you get your gun into a half inch, little clusters, and there's not wild scatter nodes either side to the left and the right of your plus minus testing. If the extreme spread is good in particular, you are going to be just fine unless you rock up to a 100-yard bench rest competition where everyone's shooting zeros. Most of shooting in the real world is not that. It is trying to get a minute delivered a long way away, certainly in the long range world. And if you have a perfectly windless day, perfect stance all the time in the world, everything squared away, on those rare days where there aren't these large variables, you could see the difference between a half-minute gun and a perfect gun at long range. But you're much, much more likely to see the difference between a guy with an SD of 15 and a guy with an SD of 10. The fact that one of them's a 0.0 at 100 and one of them's a 0.2, honestly, it's lost in the ether, guys, lost in the noise. So if you want my advice, look for stability. Don't go for these perfect wallet groups, these single perfect groups. You need a page of plus minus so that the gun is stable in different temperatures. You don't have these crazy knife edge loads, as I call them, knife edge nodes. You want the gun to be stable and calm and, pretty accurate. And then you want to get your ballistics sorted, learn your wind analysis, and those are the trees to bark up. So if I had to vote, could a squared away marksman with low SD and good control of all the variables with a 1 minute gun thrash on slightly larger targets, 1 minute targets or larger, a marksman with a perfect gun that was, bench rest at 100, world class into the zeros, can he beat him? Very much so, yeah. And especially if barrel life is a factor for you, if you've got a very hot cartridge, it is better to get the gun stable, concentrate then. If you're shooting more than about ballpark, it's normally more than about 500 yards. You want to be very much concentrating on getting your standard deviation of your speeds down. That is what will tighten you up at long range. I cannot tell you how many perfect, accurate guns I've seen that people have been shooting 200, 300, 400 yards. They've been hitting, an inch at 400 yards, and it's a wonderful custom gun, and you stretch it out, because they haven't concerned themselves overly with feet per second variation. Their gun is suddenly full of vertical, and they cannot shoot the potential of the gun. And imagine the overcorrection, guys, with vertical. You've got a shot that goes low, because unless you're over a crony, you can't tell this, but that shot was 50 feet per second low. That person will then go, oh, right, well, let's come up a couple of tenths, or, whatever they were low by. They correct. Then the next shot is nominal for speed. And that one, of course, is going to be high. And then they go, bloody hell, I've overcorrected. And they come down. And the next shot is low on the chronograph. Do you see what I mean? Vertical is a non-demonstrable noise. You cannot solve it. If you have feet per second variation, it is the limit of what you can shoot. It is a deal breaker. It's the end of your potential. So controlling that is actually more important than tiny differences in accuracy. So there we go. I hope that sheds some light on what is needed. It's important that you don't blindly follow your common sense. Common sense is useful in helping you not fall in holes in the road. But when it comes to the application of scientific principles, sometimes what you do is counterintuitive, or what you need to do is counterintuitive, and you've got to take your common sense hat off and put your scientific hat on and have things proven to you before you subscribe to them blindly. And accuracy is a little bit like that. Accuracy per se, those perfect little bug hole groups you put in your wallet, do not mean you've got a good gun. And less tangible things, like, for example, your vertical, your speed control, your feet per second consistency, they are way bigger at long range. So whilst it's admirable to try and get your reloading squared away so that your gun is super accurate, there are bigger factors at play actually. So there we go. Cheers, guys.